with us tonight, the former United States ambassador to the United Nations, Mark Wallace. He served in the administration for George W. Bush. He is now the CEO of United Against Nuclear Iran. Thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you for having me.
Would you support an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities?
I think it's very clear. This is a very somber day. A year ago today, Iran caused the greatest loss of life to the Jewish people since the Holocaust and ignited a war in the Middle East. Hamas declared war on Israel. Hezbollah joined that war on October 8th, and they were known as the axis of resistance of Iran. What they really are is the axis of cannon fodder. The Ayatollah uses these proxy groups to spread horrible hatred of violence and death across the region, killing Americans and Israelis and Westerners, and while they themselves die. The malign actor is Iran. And I think that military targets inside of Iran, including the nuclear facilities, because they are maintained and operated by the IRGC, are legitimate targets not only of Israel, but of the United States of America and the West.
Yeah, but there are pros and cons for every target that is set in Iran. And I just wonder whether you, as an American, would support the Israelis going after the nuclear facilities.
I would absolutely support. Look, there are many targets. What you said is absolutely right. There are pros and cons to targets across Iran. Sadly, for the West, Iran is a very target-rich environment of malign activity facilities, including the nuclear facilities. But the importance of degrading Iran's offensive capability, its missile capacity, and its capacity to do harm in the region is essential. And that includes certain nuclear facilities, which are spinning advanced centrifuges to enrich highly enriched uranium for no other reason than a military purpose. That ballistic missile attack that we saw recently in Israel was quite horrific. Imagine if it included nuclear weapons.
But you must appreciate that these silos where they do this are deep underground. There are question marks about the Israeli capability of reaching all of it. And if they don't reach all of it, then there is a risk that they rush for a nuclear bomb, which would set off a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. And I wonder whether that is something you could support.
Well, obviously, of course, and that's certainly a loaded question. I don't support Iran getting a nuclear weapon, but right now you see Iran only weeks away.
But do you see the risk? Do you see the risk that might develop from going after that facility and not getting all of it?
I think that Iran has nuclear facilities, and Iran's activities have caused the region to be in flames. And it's reminded all of us that we must do more on the nuclear program. And that includes the United States and Western partners and Israel striking those facilities to buy more time, because Iran is an ideology. The hubris of the BBC, the other Western networks, and frankly, all the West, is that the ideology of Iran is somehow similar to the ideology of our Western beliefs, that we can superimpose the rationale of a ceasefire and somehow a neutral negotiation.
Well, that wasn't the hubris of the BBC. That was the hubris of Barack Obama, who signed a deal in 2015, which President Trump then ripped up. And some would say that in the aftermath, the sanctions he imposed further antagonized the regime to the point where it was flooding the Middle East with weapons. I just wonder whether you think that decision ultimately brought us to this point.
Oh, absolutely not. When you look at, we supported and worked with the President Obama's administration. President Obama, through his national security team, said that Iran would rejoin the community of nations if the JCPOA was entered into. The JCPOA allowed an industrial-scale nuclear program to exist. No rational nuclear scientist would support a re-entry into the JCPOA because it allows Iran to do things far beyond a civilian nuclear enrichment program. It was a bad deal then, and it is now. And I do think it's the hubris, not just of the BBC. I'm not being overly critical of the BBC. I'm saying it's our superimposition of Western values. You and I might disagree. We don't know each other. We might disagree on something, but because we have the general lanes of our Western values, we feel that we can negotiate and find compromise. When a regime exists solely its rationale for the elimination of another people, it is very hard to strike an agreement with someone that calls for your extermination.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. I mean, you and I,
Yeah.
like, we don't, and we might disagree, but we can sort of hash it out and compromise. But when Eric Hoffer, who wrote famously
Yeah.
The True Believer,
I'm going to have to bring you short, Mark.
a devil, and this regime has made Israel and the Jewish people the devil, and we saw that play out 1 year ago today, and we can't lose sight of that and the importance of not giving the devil a nuclear weapon.